I stayed silent for my family until one quiet moment in the kitchen changed everything. I didn't learn to stay silent overnight. At first, it was just easier. Then it became familiar, and eventually, I caught myself realizing I didn't even remember what it felt like to say out loud what was actually in my heart. "Don't start," my husband would say whenever I tried to explain something, and I wouldn't. Not because I agreed, but because I knew if I started talking, it would only get worse. Back then, I didn't understand something important. Silence doesn't fix anything. It just slowly erases you. That evening felt like every other evening. I stood at the stove, stirring a pot of soup, while the kitchen clock ticked loudly on the wall. I had never noticed that clock before, but that night, it sounded different, sharper, heavier, like it was counting down to something I had been avoiding for years. There was a time when I had my own life. Nothing perfect, just normal. A job, friends, the quiet habit of stopping by a small cafe after work just to sit alone for a while. I could buy myself a coffee without explaining why, without feeling guilty. Then we got married. Then our son was born. Then our daughter. And little by little, one word started slipping into every conversation. Should. You should be wiser. You should compromise. You should stop overthinking everything. Different voices, same message. So I tried. At first, out of love. Then, to keep the peace. And eventually, just out of habit. This is what life looks like when you're always silent. You wake up before everyone else. You cook, pack lunches, check backpacks, make sure no one forgets anything. You know who hates tomatoes, who has a math test, who needs their gym shoes. And then you stand in a store holding a sweater you really like. You look at the price, you can afford it, but you put it back anyway. Because yesterday your husband sighed when he saw how much your son's new sneakers cost, and somehow that made you feel ashamed. You don't say that you're tired. You don't say that your feelings are hurt, because you already know what you'll hear. You take everything too personally. My husband wasn't a bad man, and maybe that was the biggest trap of all. He didn't yell, didn't insult me, didn't cause dramatic scenes. He simply lived as if my presence were a given. "You're home," he'd say. "It's easier for you." I would nod, because I didn't know how to explain that easier doesn't mean easy. My mother-in-law loved to visit without warning. Suitcase in hand, polite smile. "I won't stay long." She'd quietly rearrange things in my kitchen, taste the soup, then sigh softly. "Well, you tried." And I would smile back, for my husband, for peace, for another calm evening. Children notice everything, even when they pretend they don't. One day my son asked me, "Mom, why do you always agree with everyone?" I laughed it off, made a joke, but that night I lay awake for hours, wondering what an honest answer would sound like. I never found one. The night everything changed started very ordinary. I found out my mother-in-law was coming about 10 minutes before she arrived. "Mom's stopping by for dinner," my husband said, not looking up from his phone. I opened the fridge without a word. Chopped, stirred, heated. The kitchen smelled like onions and exhaustion. She sat down at the table and looked around. "You made that soup again? The kids don't even like it." I opened my mouth, then closed it. "Mom, don't start," my husband chuckled. "She's trying." She, not my name, just she. I was setting the plates on the table when I heard the sentence that broke something inside me. "Well, what do you expect?" my mother-in-law whispered to him. "She's quiet, convenient. The important thing is, she's not dramatic." My husband nodded, calmly, almost warmly. "Yeah," he said. "Life is easy with her." And suddenly, I felt nothing. No sharp pain, no anger, just emptiness. In that moment, I understood something with terrifying clarity. They didn't value me for who I was. They valued me for my silence. I walked into the bathroom and locked the door. My hands were shaking. The woman in the mirror looked unfamiliar, tired, compressed, smaller somehow. When was the last time I did something simply because I wanted to? Not because I should, not because it was the right thing, just because I wanted it. I couldn't remember. When I came back to the kitchen, my heart was pounding so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. I sat down at the table. "I don't like hearing that," I said. My voice trembled, but I finished the sentence. My mother-in-law raised her eyebrows. "Oh, come on. I didn't mean anything bad." My husband looked at me, irritation flashing across his face. "There you go again, taking everything too seriously." And that's when it hit me. They weren't being cruel. They just weren't used to me having a voice. "I don't want to stay silent anymore," I said. Not loudly, but clearly. "Well, here we go," my husband muttered with a smirk. I stood up from the table. "Yes," I said quietly. "For you, this is just the beginning." Nothing collapsed that night. No dramatic exits, no shattered plates. But something inside that house shifted, and something inside me woke up. I started speaking, at first unsure, sometimes stumbling over my words, but I said it anyway, that I was overwhelmed, that I was tired, that I needed space, that I wanted to work again, that I wanted a life that felt like mine. My husband got angry. Then he pretended not to hear me. And one day he finally said, "You've changed." "Maybe," I answered. "Before, I was barely there at all." Here's what I know now. Silence always has a price. At first, it seems free, harmless. But one day you realize you paid for it with yourself. I'm still learning how to speak. Sometimes the old instinct tells me to swallow the words, to keep the peace, to disappear again. But now I understand something I wish I had known years ago. If I choose silence again, I will vanish. So if staying quiet feels easier right now, ask yourself one question. Who will be the first person you stop hearing once your voice is gone?